chase at the 40. Look at that move. Look at Chase go. Oh, my goodness. What a gear.
He comes down to this in his car end zone. Intercepted.
McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl.
Boss here. Mixon's going to throw. Open man. Caught. Higgins. Touchdown.
Drives. Touchdown. Joe Burrow has his first rushing touchdown of the season.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Maan, I was just saying to you, man, I have not seen you in a while. It's been a little while. We had a kind of a crazy week, a crazy weekend. You had graduation. There was so much going on. We apologize, guys, for not being on Monday night, but we are here to talk Bengals. But it has been a very crazy week for both of us, Maan. How was graduation? I know it was a little bit insane the way you guys did everything, and then this weekend you guys celebrated, right?
Yes, we did. We had our big graduation party Saturday. The kids had their friends over and got a little silly. We had a good time. And then as a family, we all went to Disney's Epcot and celebrated there. Drank a lot of alcohol. I'm not feeling very well right now, and probably shows. But it is what it is. And we had a good time, but I'm hurting a little bit. But it's always good to talk Bengals. It makes me feel better. So let's do this. But we had a great time as a family, and just continue celebrating the accomplishments of the kids. And it's good times. It's good times, and it was a fun weekend.
Good deal. And again, I know you're very, very proud and very excited for Olivia and Jake, and you should be. They are awesome. All right, here we go, Mom. Let's get into some Bengal news here. We got a little bit of stuff going on this past week since the last time we've been going. Obviously, the OTAs have started, and again, we're going to talk about those a little bit. We're not seeing a lot right now because basically they're running around in shorts and a jersey. But I do want to get your take on that here in a couple minutes. Also, a lot of contract extension talk this past week. So we're going to dive into that. And, of course, the nominees for the Ring of Honor came out. And we are definitely going to jump on that and talk about that as well. But let's start off, Mon, with the OTAs. Obviously, that is the big news going on right now. We got guys running around throwing footballs, catching footballs, and doing press conferences as well. Not only that, but Mr. BJ Hill, he lived up to his bet, right, with DJ Reader and shaved his head. So BJ, much respect for you. I shaved my head as well. So trust me, man, you are not going to want to go back to having hair. It is incredible being bald. But Mom, let's talk about. Hey, man, I've not paid for a haircut in like 15 years, Mon. 15 years I have not had to pay for a haircut. It's out. And I haven't had to buy shampoo for myself, just my wife and my kids. So a lot of money saved, a lot of time saved. And of course, I have a beautiful bald head. I mean, it is almost perfectly shaped. So, it's glorious.
Bruce Gradkowski. You're Bruce Gradkowski.
Yeah, Bruce Gradkowski. Let's talk about OTAs, Mon, because, again, the players are just out doing their thing. But I tell you what, man, some of these guys look bigger and faster to me. I'm not sure what it is. Joe Burrow obviously looks like he has just not missed a beat. This guy is he's so good. And now everybody obviously man-crushing about the bandana and the long hair. He looks like an 80s what was that like a poison death leopard. I know that's your wheelhouse, Mon. But an '80s glam rock. But he's out there. He's out there. Uh, looking the part. And again, these players. I think it says a lot about where this team is because you hear around the league right now during this period of OTAs, you see a lot of guys not showing up, a lot of guys sitting out. There's a lot of contract disputes, so guys don't show up. We are not seeing that in Cincinnati. We have guys that are coming up on contract years who are out here running around participating in OTAs. And again, I think that says a lot about the culture that Zach Taylor has built in this organization. But you tell me, Mom, what are some things that you've gotten out of OTAs so far?
No, you hit on a lot of them. Obviously, Joe Burrow and that physique of his, he's definitely put on a lot of muscle, and
Yes.
he looks the part. I read where Dax Hill looks bigger. Guys have really taken the off season and gotten healthy and taken care of their bodies and gotten ready, or they're getting ready for the upcoming season. Uh, I think it was Paul Daner, Jay Morrison's podcast last week. They mentioned some of the things you just mentioned about, for example, T. Higgins. T. Higgins is here working out. Excuse me. They compared that to Debo Samuel, McLaurin for the Commanders, DK Metcalf. These are wide receivers last year that held out. They didn't show up the OTAs. And look at T. Higgins. He could easily do the same thing, but T. Higgins did not. Is there practicing with his teammates. Again, that's where the Bengals are special. They have talent. They have the quarterback. Guess what else they have? Chemistry, those intangibles. That's what takes us. That's what makes them an elite team. That locker room is just magical. When you see T. Higgins there when he doesn't need to be, obviously he wants a new contract, and I think he'll get one. You have Logan Wilson working out. He's in line to get another contract. Joe Burrow, it's look at him. I mean, he just looks so much bigger than he did at the end of last year. They get it. This team gets it, and I can't wait for this season to start because, buddy, I think something special is going to happen this year. Very special.
You know what's crazy is Mon is I sound like I feel like I sound like a broken record, but I don't. I think I'm more excited about this season than I have been in a very long time, and I know that's hard to you know to take that in and understand that because obviously we made the Super Bowl and then another AFC Championship game, and I don't know. I agree with you. I think this team, just seeing the way the guys have reacted to everything in the offseason and have come back and again, like you said, a lot of these guys look bigger and faster to me. T. Higgins looks bigger to me. I think that I do think there's something really special this year, and I think this team is hungry, and we have seen that. We have seen that too when it comes to Joe Burrow's press conference, and Jamar Chase has talked about Joe Burrow's contract extension, and I just think that these guys do get it. And I think they understand that this is a Super Bowl roster. And although the window does extend, I think, throughout Joe Burrow's career, I do think that these next couple years is the serious time, is a serious window for this team to win multiple championships. You see all the power rankings, and I don't really follow those power rankings because most of the time they're a joke. But I think there's a lot of other people out there, media included, that see how special this team could be this year. And you see the Bengals. I've seen them everywhere from 1 to 4 in power rankings. And again, those things really don't mean much, but I do think it speaks about how everyone perceives this team now and this organization. I saw Zach Taylor was he the coaching rankings or something. He was like, I don't know, 7th or 8th or something like that. I mean, nobody would have thought about that 2 years ago. So I do think that a lot of people outside of this organization are starting to realize how good this team could be.
Yeah, they're not stagnant. The Bengals understand every team in football is getting better. Look at the AFC North. The AFC North had great drafts. They signed the Steelers, the Browns, the Ravens, all signed quality players this offseason. They're all chasing us. The Bengals just didn't sit back. They got Orlando Brown. They signed Nick Scott. They signed a lot of players to come in. Yeah, we lost a couple, but they've countered it with moves to make this roster better. Their draft was solid. Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor, they know what it takes. They're not sitting back and just and just not reacting. They're making moves to make the team better because they understand the whole league is gunning for them, especially the teams in the AFC North.
Yeah, agreed. And I think too, like I said, I think when you see the way this team shows up and even goes through OTAs, when you hear about all these other holdouts, like I said before, it's just incredible to me that these guys are just so locked in. And it's crazy because there is a lot of contract talk right now. We're going to get into that in just a second, but there is a lot of contract talk right now. And a lot of times when you see those kind of things, you see guys holding out and doing those things. I just love that we don't have to worry about that with these guys. I mean, they just love football. And again, I think that's part of the drafting process now for the Bengals. They go out there and they draft guys that meet this certain criteria of they have to love football. They have to be guys that are leaders, that have been captains, that have played at a high level. And you see that now, years down the road, these guys continuing to work their asses off and show up for everything that's being asked of them to show up for. Logan Wilson has a big softball tournament coming up, big softball game coming up here in Cincinnati. And I mean, half the team is playing in it. I just think it's awesome how connected this locker room is. I don't think we can say enough kudos to Zach Taylor for what he has done. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he has done, Mon. I really don't.
No, the Bengals have this culture. They've implemented a system on offense and defense with Zach Taylor and Lou Anarumo. They know what kind of players they want. Duke Tobin, the scouts, they know what players to scout and put into this system. For years, the Bengals would draft players and try to, like Renard Wilson was a pass rusher. They tried to make him a linebacker back in the day. Now they scout college players that are going to be plug and play for their system that Zach Taylor has implemented in Lou Anarumo. So that's where the success is coming from. They know they have a system. They know what kind of player they're looking for, the player that's going to fit what they've put in place here. And what we've gotten the 2 straight AFC championships. And I think we're going to go to a third one in a Super Bowl. It's just everything is good in Bengaldom right now. It's magical. And, I said it just 5 minutes ago. I can't wait for the season to start. I really can. It's driving me crazy because it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about these contract extensions. And I think, I don't want to toot my own horn because, I don't like doing that. But I do want to say this. Is I have said from the beginning that Joe Burrow, just watch and see. Everybody's like, no. Joe Burrow is going to take all this money and do. Joe Burrow wants to win. If you don't understand that about Joe Burrow, then you have not watched this guy play football. He is one of the most competitive players, not only in the NFL, but in all of professional sports. He is at the top of guys that are competitors. This guy wants to win. And I found it interesting when Jamar Chase talked a little bit about that. And even Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow in his press conference talked about the fact that, listen, man, I want to keep this thing together. And the reason why this contract thing is taking as long as it is because we're trying to figure out how we can do that. Joe Burrow understands that money is great, but championships are better. And he understands that keeping this group of guys together is his chance of winning winning a championship. So, in saying that, Mom, in saying that, I don't think any of these chips are going to fall until Joe Burrow is signed. So, I want to hear from you, Mon. What do you think Joe Burrow's contract is going to look like? Do you think it's going to be a team-friendly contract like I do? Do you agree with me? Tell me, what do you think it's going to look like, Mon?
Okay, I played this game yesterday. It's to me, he's going to be the highest paid quarterback in football. He can have the highest paid contract in the NFL and still be team friendly. And this is how it's going to happen. The Bengals are going to give him a lot of upfront money, but he might not have as much upfront money as one of the other quarterbacks that signed within the last 2 years. But he's going to make every penny of his contract. The Bengals are going to, let's face it, they're going to honor it, and he's going to get everything he signs for. I think he's going to sign a 6-year contract at about $53 million a year. That's going to be about $318 million. That's what I think, give or take a couple million. That's going to be his contract. It's going to be about a 6-year, $53 million deal. I think they're going to wait for Herbert because Bengals want him to be the highest paid quarterback. Now, of course, people are going to say, "Oh, well, this guy got $180 million. This guy got $200 million." Burrow will get $125, $130 up front. It'll be a signing bonus, a roster bonus, but that's where the flexibility is going to come in to sign some other players we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But Burrow will sign a contract extension. I think it's going to happen within the next month. It's going to be about a 6-year, $53 million a year, and about $318 million. That's what I think it's going to be.
And so, in saying that, the Bengals are very, they do these team friendly deals, and I think we're going to see kind of the same thing. You agree? Something where, there is money going to be up front because, again, Joe Burrow's already said he wants these other guys signed. The team has already said they want these other guys signed. So I don't see Joe Burrow not doing a team friendly deal. And I think you're right too. I think the Bengals want Joe Burrow to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, they can do both. On paper, the year average, he's going to be the highest paid quarterback. But when it comes to upfront money, the way it's structured, that's going to make it team friendly. That's going to allow them to have a big lump of change to give T. Higgins, a big chunk of change, signing bonus to give Jamar Chase, and potentially Logan Wilson. I mean, I don't know if they're going to sign all four. I hope they do. But we have a 53-man roster, and we have X amount of dollars. We said it a few weeks ago, Jake. We're going to have a Jesse Bates situation every year. We're going to have a player that we love that we just can't keep. And I don't know who that's going to be next year, but it's going to happen.
Well, then let's go into the T. Higgins one because this is a very interesting situation, right? You have a situation where you really have two number one receivers, to be honest. I mean, you have two top 10 receivers on your team, and you got to pay both of them. You want to pay both of them. So let's say Joe Burrow does this 6-year, $53 million contract like you think he's going to do. T. Higgins now, I'm going to say T. Higgins is going to be somewhere 4 years between 80 and 90 million probably. I think that's pretty realistic for T. Higgins. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to say about 4 years, 80 to 90 million. And of course that puts T, T's going to get a little over 20 million a year. But I think the Bengals are going to work this into a team-friendly deal where they can, maybe give some money up front and in roster bonuses and that sort of thing, and still give T a contract that he deserves. I find it interesting, Mom, because all of these naysayers out there, everybody wants to see the Bengals fail, right? And that's when you know you're a good team, when everybody wants you to fail. And nobody wants to see T. Higgins back in a Bengals uniform except for Bengal fans, because obviously they understand that, we have the best receiving core in the NFL. So what do you think? Because T. Higgins, I love it. Even I think on NFL Network the other day, they're firing questions. There's no way, T, that you're going to be a Bengals. and T's like, listen, it's going to happen. I'm going to be a Bengal. What do you think T. Higgins' contract is going to look like? I say between 80 and 90 million. What do you think?
I think that's very fair. If they could get him for 80 to 90, I mean, make that happen now. Um, I believe I'm going to bracket it. It's going to be between 21 and 25 million dollars a year. Bleacher Report had a 4-year, $97 million contract. I think Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver for the Commanders, signed something around that area. I think Higgins is going to want more. I think your numbers are good, Jake. I could see maybe $22, $24 million a year. That's going to put him over 90. But I think, T. Higgins and his camp and his agent, who was also Jesse Bates' agent, he wants his guy to get, he thinks he's a number one receiver in football. And obviously the Bengals do too, according to some tweets today. And he's going to sign. I expect 4, maybe a 5-year deal. It's going to be interesting. Right now, currently, while you're talking, I looked on overthecap.com. The Bengals are at $14 million in available cap space. So to sign these guys, they're going to have to make some moves. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But according to Over the Cap, they have just under $15 million in available cap space. Of course, that's fluid. They can manipulate it and do a lot of things.
Yeah,
You could sign players with that, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of big contracts on the books for this year and next year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 24 months.
So again, I still think that when you look at this Bengals draft class of Joe and T and Logan, there's definitely not a better Bengal draft class. I'm not sure you could say that draft class is not a top 10 draft class for a team, maybe of all time. Now, I would have to go back and look. There's probably some ones that are better, but those first 3 picks are incredible because you're talking about all 3 of those guys being top 10 players at their positions. Logan Wilson is kind of the odd man out, but I still think he's going to be a Bengal for life. What do you think Logan's contract is going to look like? I think this one, more than the other two are going to be very interesting to see. I'm really interested to see where Logan Wilson's is going to go, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot mine out first. I think Logan's going to be probably a 4-year. I'm going to say 4-year, maybe, I don't know, 15 million range a year. What do you think?
That's going to be a tough one, Jake. I know how the Bengals operate. They just signed Jermaine Pratt to a very team-friendly contract. Yes. Jermaine Pratt arguably was better than Logan Wilson last year, or just as, it's fairly close. But Jermaine Pratt, I think you said it, and I agreed with you. I think he was the second best player in our defense last year. And it's going to be weird if, let's say, those numbers that you just stated come out. Let's say he gets $15 million a year. It's about $5 million more a year than Jermaine Pratt. I just don't see the Bengals doing that. I want Logan Wilson to sign a contract extension. I think it's going to be very similar to Jermaine Pratt's. That's the offer, maybe a little bit more. Will he take it? I don't know. I really don't know. I think his camp probably thinks he could get more. I just don't see him getting potentially $15 million more than Jermaine Pratt. I just don't see it. I think the Bengals are worried about. They have a great locker room. I'm not saying they're worried about their locker room, but I just don't see them offering them that much more than Jermaine Pratt.
Well, in Logan Wilson's defense, and again, I said it when the season ended, I think Jermaine Pratt was the second best player on defense last year. But I also think Logan Wilson's ceiling is much higher, and I think his potential is much higher. And I think the Bengals understand that. And that's not a knock on Jermaine Pratt at all. I'm a huge Jermaine Pratt fan. When the season ended, I said he is one of my top 2 free agents that I want back in a Bengals uniform. I love Jermaine Pratt. I just think that Logan Wilson, I just think there's more potential there. And I think the Bengals understand that. I think Logan Wilson is a top 10 off-ball linebacker in the NFL. I think he is legit. And, and I also would say that if that bull crap holding penalty wasn't called in the Super Bowl, Logan Wilson could very well have been the MVP along with T. Higgins. So I think that 4 years, 15 million, something like that range. I think that is a fair contract for Logan Wilson. I think he deserves that contract, I should say. But it is going to be interesting to see because then you got Jamar Chase the following year. So you have again the Bengals having to work these numbers. And I'll tell you right now, Mon, if the Bengals pull this off, which I think they will, but if they pull this off and all 4 of these guys are signed for the next 3 or 4 years or 5 or 6 years or whatever it is, I think the Bengals front office should be the front office of the century because if they are able to keep all 4 of these guys, that is a home run for this organization. But I think when you look at Jamar Chase, Mon, now you're talking about close to 30 million a year for Jamar Chase.
More.
And I think it's going to
More.
What? More.
I think it's going to be more. Yeah.
Wow. What do you think it's going to be?
I'm thinking he's going to want, I'll bracket it to 30 to 35 million. I think he's going to want it and I think he's going to get it. Going back to Wilson, I do agree with your statement that his ceiling is higher. I think he will get more money. I just don't know how much more. I don't think it's going to be significant because he's not going to get Roquan Smith money. It's not even going to be close to that. But
Roquan Smith shouldn't have got Roquan Smith money. That's so ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that's where the stand, like his agent might go, hey, our guy is just as good. We think he's better.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I hope they do bring back Logan Wilson, and I think he will get a nice contract offer. Hopefully his camp accepts it. Jamar Chase, I think we mentioned it the other day, Higgins, him, and Burrow, that's going to take up about 45% of our estimated cap space. You throw in Logan Wilson. It's a lot of money, Jake. It really is. And I think the Bengals front office can easily do it. The problem is this. They have to, you just mentioned the great draft they had a few years ago. They got to do this every year because you're looking at almost 50% of our payroll potentially going to 4 guys. That's going to be really detrimental to your depth on this roster. And I'll guarantee you this. This is nothing earth-shattering. Burrow and Chase are going to be Bengals for years. And I think Higgins will be too. Some of the others, 50-50, but those 3 are going to be Bengals. And those numbers are going to be astronomical. But Jamar Chase is going to get $30+ million next year.
I just think, Mon, and again, call me crazy, and I might be, and this might be the homer of me speaking, but I just, when you hear Jamar and you hear T and you hear Joe and you hear these guys talking about money, I don't hear the I need to be the highest paid this or I need to be the highest paid that. What I do hear is from all 3 of them, I do hear we want to stay together. We don't want to leave Cincinnati. And we want everybody to be able to be signed. And I don't know, man. Again, like I said, maybe it's a homer in me talking, but I really believe, Mon, that we might be wrong about a couple of these other contracts. I don't know about Logan Wilson, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I could see them taking – at least working out a contract that is a team-friendly deal, just like Joe Burrow is. I don't know, man. I don't hear all of that. I don't hear all of that, what you normally hear. I need to be paid. I need to be the top this. I need to be the top that. All I hear about is we want to win championships. We want to be Bengals. We want to be together. That's all I hear. And so for me, I'm going to be very interested to see how this whole thing works out, because I think we might be wrong about a couple of these other contracts. I think just like Joe Burrow is going to do, I think these other guys are going to do the same.
Jake, they could. They could. I think overall contract, the number is going to be very high. I think where it becomes team friendly, like I said a few minutes ago, might be a little less upfront money. Maybe the money's allocated differently. The agent and the player has to agree to it, obviously. Guaranteed money could be in year two. Some players don't like that. Something catastrophic can happen in year one. I think they'll be flexible there. That will give them more, hey, maybe we can save our cornerback four, or backup linebacker that we would have to let go. So, yeah, I think when you have a good locker room, you have success. You have Joe Burrow. The Joe Burrow effect is real. They know they're going to be playing for championships every year. Yeah, they might take 5-10% less than a player that signed the year before. I hope you're right. I hope it happens. It's just astronomical numbers. And, it's not like the NBA. The NBA has these guaranteed contracts. Baseball, NBA has 15 players. NFL has 53 players they have to active players, not counting the practice squad. There's only so much money. There's only so much money. It's going to be very interesting. These next 24 months when it comes to contract negotiations, it's going to be something to watch and monitor. And we will be on the Bengals' pulse.
Well, and I really think, too, once this Joe Burrow one falls, I think the other two are coming pretty quickly after. I just think the Joe Burrow contract is the domino that's going to start this whole thing. And I think we see the other two signing pretty quickly afterwards. But going to be interesting to see. Go ahead, Mom, what are you going to say?
Yeah, let me just, like I said, also not over the cap. I found this really interesting real quick, Jake. This is 2024, next year's contract, next year's salary cap. The Bengals have $60 million in available cap space. All right, and obviously, some of the players are going to drop off. Tyler Boyd's not accounted for. Some of these guys in the last year of their contract. But here's some players that are accounted for next year in their cap hits. Trey Hendrickson is almost $18 million next year. Joe Mixon's at $13 million. They have Joe Burrow allocated because they picked up his option at $30 million. You have B.J. Hill at 10, Orlando Brown 16, Sam Hubbard at 10, Lael Collins at 8. I'm not saying they're going to cut anybody, but there's a lot of money in this allocated in 2024 to players that might not be on the team. So the $60 million in available cap space could easily go up to almost 80, 90 million. So the Bengals do have a lot of room to make moves. They do. And, I think the big three are going to sign. I think they're all going to be here. Logan Wilson, I do want Logan Wilson to stay. I think he's so important. I think if I had to prioritize, I think he's fourth, obviously. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and him. Yeah. And then, so it's
I tell you who else is up there. I tell you who else is up there. High priority is DJ Reader. And that's one that you're not counting against the cap next year. I'm guessing.
Because he's in the last year of this.
He's in the last year. But I'm going to tell you right now. I assure you, you hear it right now on the Bengals Pulse. I assure you that Jamar Chase and DJ Reader will be Bengals. They will both sign contract extensions, guaranteed.
His cap number this year is $15 million. If anybody gives the Bengals a discount, I think he's the one guy that could do it.
DJ,
I think DJ Reader. He got a giant payday. And trust me, if they re-sign him next year for 2-2, they're not going to sign him for $10. They're going to give him a hell of a contract. Yeah. But I think if anybody that might give them a little bit of a discount, I think it could be him.
Could you see Joe Mixon? Could you see Joe Mixon walking in and saying, "Hey, I'll take half"?
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon's going to be a Bengal this year, but I don't think he's going to be a Bengal at that number that he has for this year. I think that they're quietly, if they haven't already, restructured his contract. You saw the clip today where at the OTAs where he's running down the field congratulating Yoshivas, the wide receiver from Princeton. Yeah, man, that's why you love Joe Mixon. He's like a little kid out there, man. He's so excited for the players, and we're a better team with Joe Mixon on the team, and I hope it happens, and I think it will.
Yeah, I think it will too. All right, last thing, Mon. Let's get to this because you and I love this Ring of Honor thing. I mean, kudos again for the Bengals finally putting a Ring of Honor together. I mean, every time I go to a home game and see that Ring of Honor, there's so much pride there because it's guys I grew up watching and loving so much. Let's go over who's up there right now. Obviously, the great Ken Anderson, who should be in the Hall of Fame. We should be saying Hall of Famer Ken Anderson. But you have Ken Anderson, you have Willie Anderson, another guy we should be saying Willie Anderson, Hall of Famer, and I think we will eventually. Paul Brown, Isaac Curtis, Anthony Munoz, Hall of Famer, and Ken Riley, Hall of Famer. So who is going to join that outstanding group of Bengals? Now, I am a season ticket holder, so I do get to vote on this. It's one of the only things that I enjoy voting for, but I'm very excited to vote for it. I'm not going to say who I'm going to vote for, so I'm not going to let you, Mon, tell me your top two because I'm not going to give you mine because obviously I don't want to say who I'm voting for right now. But I am going to say I want to hear your top four. Okay, so right now we're going to do top four. Obviously, two of those guys will get picked. Here are the 2023 Bengals Ring of Honor nominees. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
First up, Jim Breach. Jim Breach, obviously the greatest kicker in Bengals history. Back in 88, 89, if the Bengals win that Super Bowl, he's probably the MVP of that Super Bowl. James Brooks, one of yours and one of my favorite Bengals of all time, running back extraordinaire. Chris Collinsworth, wide receiver, obviously now known for his TV appearances, but Chris Collinsworth, a guy who is from your neck of the woods up there in Titusville, Florida. Running back Corey Dillon. Obviously, a guy that put up incredible numbers at running back for a lot of those awful, awful years that we had to sit through. But Corey Dillon, Boomer Esiason, my childhood hero, one of my favorite Bengals of all time. Obviously, quarterback of that 88, 89 team that was just so incredible and fun to watch. David Fulcher, again, on that same 88-89 team, really one of the captains of that incredible defense, the SWAT team, just again one of my favorite Bengals of all time. Chad Ochocinco Johnson, obviously one of the wide receiver Bengal greats. If his career ended up differently, a little bit differently, probably would be up for the Hall of Fame. Tim Crumry, again, blue collar, nose tackle, 3-tech, had that awful leg break in the Super Bowl. But again, one of the great Bengal defensive linemen, Dave Lapham, who obviously not only one of the great Bengal offensive linemen, but the color guy for the Bengals now, and does so many great things for the Bengals. You just love to see a guy like that who is just a diehard Bengals fan. He's just a diehard Bengals fan, but done so much for that organization. Hard not to have him on this list or keep him off the list, I should say. Max Montoya, one of the Bengal offensive line greats that I know you love. Lamar Parrish, a guy that does not get enough credit. One of the great Bengals defenders. Just his numbers are incredible. I think he's got almost 50 career interceptions. Bob Trumpy, obviously a guy that all Bengal fans know very well from that 81 team. Just an incredible wide receiver / tight end. And Reggie Williams, the Bengal great, was a Bengal for over a decade. Now worked in office in Cincinnati after he retired. Just a Cincinnati guy, a Cincinnati great. Reggie Williams, linebacker for the Bengals. That's a great list, Mon. I mean, every guy on that list I grew up watching as a kid. I had, out of those guys, I probably had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had 7 of those guys' jerseys growing up as a kid. 7, Mon, of those guys' jerseys growing up as a kid. Just an incredible group of players. I'm going to make you pick 4 of them, Mon. You tell me your top 4 from that incredible list.
Okay, this is really hard. Obviously, you make fun of my age. I'm older. I tend to lean towards the older players, the guys from the
You're a lot
70s and
older.
80s.
A lot older.
I feel for those guys because they were such good players, and unfortunately, they were overshadowed by those elite Steeler teams. But guys like Lamar Parrish, honestly, was one of the best defensive backs ever to play the game. 47 career interceptions. His punt returns are
47.
so electrifying. Yeah, and he was just like he was Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders. It makes it a little
Yes,
hard
he
for
was.
him. Yeah, he played 8 years with the Bengals, and he did
Didn't
play
he have
for
like
Redskins.
13 touchdowns?
Yes,
he
he
had like
did.
13 or 15 touchdowns or something crazy like
Yeah,
that.
and multiple fumble recoveries too. 13 fumble recoveries. He spent most of his career with the Bengals. Spent a lot of time with the Redskins, so it's a little, people might get a little mixed up there. But I think he's a no brainer. I just don't see how he can't be, because when it comes to Pro Bowls and All Pros, because back in the day, being a Pro Bowl selection was prestigious. It wasn't really a popularity
Yes.
contest. But he was
Yes.
an All Pro. He's an NFL All Pro, 5-time NFL All Pro. That's second when it comes to Bengals to Anthony Munoz. I just don't see how. I just don't see how he can't be. Obviously, he's one of my selections. I'm really James Brooks is one of my all-time favorite Bengals. When the Bengals traded for him, Pete Johnson went to the Chargers, and they sent us James Brooks. James Brooks had a couple off years. They were down on him. He's too small to be in the NFL. What does he do? He comes in and plays 6 years, leads us to a Super Bowl. Pound for pound, one of the toughest football players I've ever seen. Electrifying. He was unbelievable. Obviously, the big guy, Boomer Esiason, NFL MVP, 88. Just that natural leader. He took the Bengals. Let's face it, the Bengals haven't had a lot of superstar players that are nationwide players. People were buying Boomer jerseys in California. Okay,
Yeah.
Boomer Esiason. We see that with Joe Burrow now. We see that with Chad Johnson. Corey Dillon had a national base. Not a lot of Bengals have national bases. Boomer was one that did. Boomer's one. I think that's 3.
That's 3.
Yeah. You know what? Let's just go with Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon is going to be my 4th. Yeah, Corey Dillon was a certified stud. He was, he had some contentious years. He didn't get along with management, but I still can't get that one game against the Denver Broncos. The Bengals had 11 yards passing. They could not throw the ball.
Scott Mitchell.
Scott Mitchell.
Scott Mitchell was the quarterback, I remember. And I think Scott Mitchell, in that game, Scott Mitchell had like a 14 or 15-yard run. I mean, it was like the Bengals could not be stopped. Denver knew what the Bengals were doing, and they still could not stop them.
And crazy. Jake, the Broncos had like a top 10 defense that year.
Yeah.
Cincinnati finished over 400 yards rushing. Listen, Dave Lapham, everybody on that list, even Chris Collinsworth, Tim Krumrie, everyone is deserving. I'm sort of ticked off that the Bengals only allow 2 in a year. There's such a backlog of players. It should be 4 to 6 players. Let's get some of these guys in there. Bob Trumpy was a great tight end in the 70s. Just amazing player. And, it would be great to see him, but I think it's going to be, if I had a vote, it'd be Boomer and Lamar. Because, Boomer, NFL MVP, and Lamar Parrish. And the numbers speak for themselves. I get it. Some of those were with the Redskins. But he spent most of his career in Cincinnati, and he was very electrifying. And I know Ken Riley's about to go in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves it. But there was a lot of people in the 70s that felt Lamar Parrish was better. And he was that good. He was that good. And that's my 2 picks right there.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just do my 4 real quick.
Okay.
3 of ours are the same. Uh, First, James Brooks. I think James Brooks is more than deserving. I think he, for us that grew up in the '80s, watching the Bengals and loving the Bengals in the '80s, uh, you know, obviously the first time I ever watched James Brooks, he was in a Chargers uniform against us in the Freezer Bowl, and when he came to Cincinnati, I just fell in love with him. I mean, I fell in love. I remember playing in the backyard, pretend like I was James Brooks. I just and again, my nostalgia is not part of this, but when you look at James Brooks's numbers, they are so impressive, Mon. They are so impressive. He gets overlooked all the time. He is one of the all-time Bengal running back greats. And I just to me, James Brooks uh, has got to be in my top 4. Boomer Esiason, I already said. I mean, you said it, NFL MVP. He made the Bengals cool. Like he just made them cool. He was when he came around and we drafted him, he became my favorite Bengal player and still well, I don't know. Joe Burrow's pretty far up there, but Boomer's definitely still in my top 3 all-time favorite Bengals. I just think what he did for Cincinnati and this organization was just incredible. Again, the Bengals, Ken Anderson was one of the best quarterbacks of his era, but Boomer Esiason just made the Bengals cool. Um, Lamar Parrish, I agree with you. I think Lamar Parrish is really a no-brainer. I mean, I know again he spent some years with the Redskins, but his numbers are comparable to Hall of Fame guys. Guys that are in the Hall of Fame, Lamar Parrish's numbers are comparable to. And and so those are my 3 like yours. And I'm gonna say Chad Johnson. And I'm gonna tell you, Mon, right now. I'm gonna tell you right now, if Chad doesn't get hurt and Chad doesn't go through that spell and the New England debacle and the Miami debacle and all this other stuff, we are talking about Chad Johnson as a Hall of Fame wide receiver. His numbers are still impressive. Even what he has now is basis enough to at least get him in the talks of being in the NFL Hall of Fame. Chad Johnson again, just like Boomer. Boomer left. The Bengals went through this real bad spell, and Chad Johnson came and just made the Bengals fun to watch again. And just like you said, he was a national icon. There were people buying Bengal jerseys all over the world because of Ocho Cinco, Chad Johnson. And even to this day, I just love that he is such a Bengals fan. I
Yeah.
just think he is so deserving of being in that top 4. So my top 4: Brooks, Chad, Boomer, Lamar. You have Brooks, Boomer, Lamar, and Corey Dillon. We will see
Can I
who.
have a? I want an honorable mention. Can I get an honorable mention? I'm not going to say Chad. I want the young folks to realize how good Tim Krumrie was.
Oh
Tim
man,
Krumrie, before snapping his leg in the Super Bowl,
oh man, he was so
was
good, Mon.
easily the best nose tackle in football.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
so
everybody
good.
talked about Randy White and all these other guys. He played in a small market in Cincinnati. He was unstoppable. He was leading the NFL in tackles as a nose tackle,
It's
and
crazy.
he played years after the broken leg. He wasn't the same, but for about 4 years, he was literally unblockable.
Oh
And
man, he was so good.
if he would have
When,
stayed
when
healthy, he would have been a Hall of Famer. He would have been a Hall of Famer if he stayed healthy.
so I was
I
in
think.
seven. I was in 7th grade. I was in 7th grade for that Super Bowl, and I was living in Georgia. I was the only Bengal fan in Georgia. I was in 7th grade. I had a big Super Bowl party, and everybody there was rooting for the 49ers except for me. So I invited all these people over to my house. I had all my Bengal stuff out, ready to roll. When Tim Krumrie broke his leg, I wept. I mean, wept in front of all of my everybody I went to school with. I just wept. I was devastated when he broke his leg. Again, I don't think people realize, like you said, how good Tim Krumrie was. Unfortunately, everybody has this knowledge of him because of this horrible thing that happened in the Super Bowl. But man, he had an incredible career with the Bengals. He's one of the Bengal all-time greatest defensive linemen. He was so good, man. So good.
God, I was 20 years old in that Super Bowl, and
Well,
man,
you're old.
I
You're
was
old,
one.
dude.
I mean, I tell you, the ladies love me, man. I was something else.
All right. Well, hey, listen, guys, we want to know from you who you think should be in the Ring of Honor. So make sure you put in the comments. Let us know what Bengal greats do you want to see in the Ring of Honor, and let us know what you think about these contract extensions. If you think all of our guys, all 4 of our big ones, are going to get signed, let us know, guys. Once again, I think, Mon, it's going to be very interesting to see how this contract situation works out. But if the Bengals pull this off, then I think the days of all that nonsense about this organization, they have got to end. Because if the Bengals pull this off, it is one of the most incredible roster maneuvers for any organization of all time.
Yeah, it will be. I tell you, yeah, if they can make it happen and make it work, they deserve all the credibility and the praise, because it's going to take some work, Jake. It really is. It's going to take some work, and keep my fingers crossed. I think it's going to happen.
All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, guys, make sure you check us out on all of the awesome podcast platforms: Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And as always, give Maan and I that 5-star review. We would very much appreciate that. Guys, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Bengals @Bengals_Pulse9. And on Instagram, the same without the @Bengals_Pulse9. Make sure you follow Maan and I on our Twitters, located right down below these 2 beautiful faces. Make sure you follow us both on Twitter. And as always, make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Wincinnati Podcast Network. Again, guys, we are sorry that we're a little late with the show this week, but we will be back Monday talking more Bengals with you guys. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will see you next week.
See ya.